Welcome back to the deep dive. So we've got a stack of sources here covering the Powerless Trilogy.
Yeah,
And this is a series that is, it's utterly dominating the conversation right now.
absolutely.
We are strapping in for a pretty high-stakes, high-emotion analysis of a world where magic isn't just a desirable trait.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's a prerequisite for basic survival.
Okay, so let's unpack the core idea we found running through all the source material.
Yeah.
Imagine living in a kingdom where power isn't just about influence.
Right.
It literally dictates your value as a human being, and you have absolutely none of it.
None. Zero.
This series just cuts straight to the bone. It's not just a forbidden love story. It's a blueprint for surviving radical social inequality and ultimately staging a revolution. That is a seriously loaded setup.
It is. And the sources give us such clear markers for success and failure in this world. Our mission is to execute a swift, deep dive into this narrative. We need to distill the essential world building, understand the high-stakes framework that constantly drives the characters to the brink.
Right.
And, most importantly, pull out the key thematic messages revolving around the concept of power itself. Not just who has it, but who gets to define it.
Right. So let's start with the foundation, because this world is built on a brutal, inescapable truth. The sources make it clear that the kingdom operates under a rigid, two-tiered system. You have the elites, who possess supernatural powers.
And then you have the ordinaries, who have no power at all. Simple, deadly, and absolute.
And that simplicity is where the systemic danger lies. What's fascinating here is how the sources immediately clarify the consequences of this magical divide.
It's not just a status symbol.
No.
In this world, power equals safety, respect, and crucially, life.
Wait, I need to pause on something the source material emphasizes. Being powerless isn't just treated as a deficiency.
No, it's much worse.
It's explicitly defined as a crime. That sounds like next-level institutionalized oppression. What does that practically look like? How is that enforced?
That's the key piece of world building that instantly establishes the tension.
Okay.
When they say it's a crime, they mean it is legally actionable. The ordinaries are actively hunted, they're imprisoned, or they're killed. They face what are called purges.
Purges.
Which are essentially state-sanctioned extermination efforts. This level of systemic injustice means the protagonist isn't just facing social prejudice.
No, she's facing capital punishment just for existing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That makes the stakes constant, pervasive, not just isolated plot points. It means every ordinary is living in permanent disguise.
Constantly one mistake away from death. This sets the stage perfectly for our protagonist, Paedyn Gray, the powerless heroine.
And Paedyn is the perfect vehicle for exploring this world. She's an ordinary, completely powerless.
Right.
Yet the sources are quick to emphasize she's not a passive victim. She's a survivor, highly skilled, hyper-observant, and fearless.
And her strategy for survival is deception. To stay alive in this dangerous city, she pretends to be an elite. The sources describe her as weaponizing her intelligence. She uses her mind and her courage to compensate for the lack of magic, essentially creating this powerful, deceptive persona to hide her true criminal identity every single day.
Exactly. Her true strength is her brain, her wits, which are skills the system simply doesn't recognize as power.
Right.
She is the living contradiction of the kingdom's core values. And then we introduce the personification of that system, Kai Azer.
The morally gray male lead.
He is the polar opposite of Paedyn, at least initially. He's an elite, described as powerful, dangerous, deadly.
And he's the king's enforcer.
Which means his job is literally to uphold this oppressive system and hunt down ordinaries. He starts the series following the rules without question. He is the ultimate antagonist to her very existence.
I found it interesting that the sources paint him with shades of gray from the start, though. They say he's carrying guilt and confusion even before he meets Paedyn. How does that internal moral complexity manifest? He can't just be a standard villain if he's the romantic lead.
Well, it's the essential engine for the slow burn romance.
Okay.
He begins operating on the belief that the system is necessary, but there's already a crack in his foundation. Meeting Paedyn, this incredibly compelling, deceptive ordinary, it just completely shatters his belief system.
He's forced to confront the deep immorality of the rules he upholds.
Yes, he's the internal conflict wrapped in lethal power.
So you have this absolutely deadly paradox. The person Paedyn needs to avoid to survive is the one person she is intensely and dangerously drawn to.
And his entire duty is to execute her kind.
That tension is incredible, and it launches us straight into the escalating plot across the 3 books.
Right. Let's start with book 1.
Powerless. The plot immediately accelerates when Paedyn is accidentally caught up in the purging trial.
And these aren't just a friendly tournament.
No, not at all. The sources depict them as brutal, violent, public competitions designed for elites to demonstrate their dominance.
Their magical superiority. And she, the powerless girl, is forced to participate in this deadly magical spectacle.
The structural genius of the first book is that the high stakes of the world, the systemic oppression,
Are immediately funneled into a plot device, the trials.
yes, and the immediate threat is phenomenal. She has to maintain her deadly secret during a series of high-profile, violent tests. If her identity is revealed, it is instant public death.
And the romance is forced right into this crucible of danger,
It's the ultimate slow burn tension.
where attraction and absolute mortal danger exist side by side. Trust and fear are constantly colliding. The romance is forbidden not because their families disapprove.
No, but because Kai's job is to literally kill her. That unavoidable, life-threatening tension is what drives the whole first book.
And here's where the narrative gets really interesting moving into book 2, Reckless.
The title itself signals the emotional carnage.
It does. In this installment, the deception explodes, the truth comes out, and it fundamentally changes everything between Paedyn and Kai.
And between Paedyn and the whole kingdom.
The sources describe this pivot as darker, much more emotional and intense. The plot centers on the fallout of that truth,
Betrayal, heartbreak.
emotional pain, and massive political manipulation. Paedyn is forced to stop just running and hiding. The consequences of her identity force her directly into the path of a rebellion.
So what about Kai's journey in Reckless? The first book established the connection, but the second book, it demands a choice, right?
Precisely. This is Kai's breaking point. He faces the ultimate dilemma: duty versus love.
He can no longer rationalize the system.
Not at all. He has to confront the immorality of the entire structure he upheld. This is described as a total emotional and philosophical breakdown of his world. He realizes the rules he followed were fundamentally wrong,
And that realization carries a heavy emotional cost.
which is a major draw for readers who love that morally complex male lead.
And then everything culminates in the final book, Fearless. We move past personal drama and survival and into all-out war.
The narrative shifts from individual choices to revolution. The rebellion reaches its full form, challenging the system through war, sacrifice, and finally, the ultimate revelation of truth about the kingdom itself.
So Paedyn's character arc achieves full completion here. She moves past merely surviving, that defining, deceptive trait of book one.
To stepping up and taking a clear stand as a leader, not just a fighter. The sources emphasize that her courage and her moral clarity become the genuine power the rebellion needs.
And of course, the forbidden love story is put to the ultimate test in this final installment.
Oh, yeah.
War and revolution. They started as enemies, became uneasy allies, suffered betrayal, and now their survival depends on their ability to fight together.
Against everything they were taught to believe.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the entire trilogy, while it has that incredible action and intense romance, it's constantly exploring these heavy themes that resonate far beyond the fantasy world. We see the clear conflict of systemic power versus fundamental humanity, the devastating effects of social inequality.
And the constant navigation of identity and deception.
That distinction between magic and genuine strength is the core message, isn't it?
Absolutely. The central thematic concept that defines Paedyn's journey and the story's overall message is strength without magic.
It fundamentally redefines what power means.
It does.
Yeah.
The system says magic is power. The narrative says choice, courage, heart, and compassion are also power, and they are the only things that can successfully dismantle that system. It's the journey toward justice, led by the person the system explicitly deemed worthless.
That focus on internal strength is certainly powerful, but let's be real, the primary draw is the romance.
Of course.
How does the forbidden nature of that relationship elevate it beyond standard YA tropes? We see a lot of enemies to lovers.
The sources are clear that the deadly stakes are what distinguish this pairing. It's characterized using all the classic terms slow burn, enemies to lovers. But the added layer is the constant institutional violence. Their relationship is inherently a political act of rebellion. The attraction is constantly undercut by the fact that Kai, by nature of his job, is an existential threat to Paedyn.
So this necessity for absolute secrecy, trust, and sacrifice makes the eventual connection feel earned.
And infinitely more precious.
And based on the feedback from readers, this narrative style seems to be incredibly addictive. How is the author, Lauren Roberts, handling this balance?
Her style is described as fast-paced, emotional, dramatic, and utterly bingeable. She manages to balance the intense action of the trials and the rebellion
Right.
with the emotional depth of the romance and that critical inner conflict, both Paedyn's constant need to hide and Kai's very public moral disintegration.
So readers really love that confluence of elements.
They do. The strong female lead who thrives without the traditional source of power, the complexity of the morally gray male lead, the high-stakes trials that keep the adrenaline high.
The emotional too.
The genuine emotional depth of the relationship and that strong found family dynamic that grounds the characters amidst the chaos of war.
If you are trying to figure out if this deep dive is relevant to your reading list, the sources give us a perfect comparison set. If you are already a dedicated fan of high-stakes fantasy like The Hunger Games, the power dynamics of Red Queen and Divergent,
And especially the morally complex romance and intense action of Fourth Wing.
then this trilogy is structured directly for that sweet spot audience. It hits all those notes of high action, forbidden love, and political revolution.
So we've tracked the world, the characters, and the narrative escalation. What does this all mean for you listening?
The final takeaway message distilled from the source material is simple yet incredibly profound. You don't need magic or institutional approval to be powerful. Courage, choice, and heart are sufficient.
They're enough to challenge an entire kingdom built on arbitrary power structures.
This entire story is ultimately about standing up and challenging a corrupt system that defines human value by a single exclusive trait.
It's about the monumental, dangerous, and revolutionary act of choosing love and justice over safety and conformity, which raises an important question for you to mull over after this deep dive.
Sure.
If a society defines power by a single, inherent, and exclusive trait like magic, what kind of inherent internal power, perhaps courage or compassion, does that system necessarily fail to account for? And why is that hidden internal strength often the most dangerous and destabilizing threat to the entire structure? Something to chew on as you consider which side of the rebellion you would stand on.